The council chamber on Nexus Prime was a massive dome of transparent crystal that looked out into the stars. 12 different species sat around the circular table, each representative wearing the colors of their homeworld. The air hummed with translation devices, turning every language into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Xyloth of the Kryn Empire adjusted his scales and looked around the table. His people were reptilian, standing on 2 legs with bright green skin that shifted colors with their moods. Right now his scales showed calm blue patterns, but inside he felt bored. These council meetings were always the same. Trade disputes, mining rights, small arguments that took hours to solve. The matter of the Belton shipping lanes is settled, said Chairman Vross, a tall being made of crystalline structures that caught the light. We move to the next issue. The archaeological findings on Sigma-7. Xyloth barely listened as Dr. Velshaw, a young Kryn historian, stood to present her findings. She was smaller than most Kryn, with darker scales and bright orange eyes that showed her excitement. She touched a control panel and holographic images appeared above the table. Honored council members, Velshaw began, her voice shaking slightly. We have discovered something remarkable in the old archives beneath Sigma-7. Documents that are over 500 years old, from before the coalition was formed. The images showed strange symbols and pictures. Xyloth leaned forward, suddenly interested. The symbols looked familiar somehow, like something from childhood stories. These documents mention a species called humans, Velshaw continued. They came from a planet called Earth, or Terra in their old language. According to these records, humans were part of an ancient alliance of species that existed before our time. Fairy tales, grunted Ambassador Throck, a massive bear-like creature from Urson Prime. His fur was silver with age and his voice was deep like thunder. Every civilization has myths about ancient races. It means nothing. With respect, Ambassador Throck, these are not myths, Velshaw said, her scales flickering orange with frustration. We have physical evidence. There is a derelict space station on the edge of the Tarot system that matches the architecture described in these documents. We have recovered weapons that our best engineers cannot understand, let alone replicate. The metal they are made from is stronger than anything we can produce. She brought up another image. It showed a symbol. A blue circle with green land masses and white clouds surrounded by stars. This is Earth, she said quietly. Or it was. According to the records, 500 years ago there was a great war. Many species died. The humans fought in this war, and after it ended, they disappeared. No one knows what happened to them. Some records say they were destroyed. Others say they chose to leave, to go beyond the known galaxy. And some records, said Ambassador Filn, a floating jellyfish-like being from the water world of Aquos, say that humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Warriors who could live on almost any world, who refused to surrender even when defeat was certain, who would burn their own cities rather than let enemies take them. Ghost stories to frighten young ones, Throck said with a snort. If these humans were so powerful, where are they now? Dead and gone, that's where. Lost to time like 1,000 other species. Xyloth studied the images carefully. He remembered the stories his grandmother had told him when he was young. Stories about the sky warriors from Earth who could breathe fire and never felt fear. Stories about ships that could cross the galaxy in days. He had thought they were just stories, meant to teach lessons about courage and honor. What else do the records say? He asked Velshaw. Her scales brightened with hope that someone was taking her seriously. They say that humans had no natural weapons. No claws, no venom, no thick armor like many of us. But they had something else. They had minds that could solve any problem. They had bodies that could heal from terrible wounds. They could eat almost anything, live in almost any temperature, and adapt to places that would kill other species. They also, she continued, pulling up another document, had something the old records call persistence. They would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. They would fight battles that lasted years. And they had a saying that appears in many of the recovered texts: humanity does not go gentle into that good night. Poetry, Throck dismissed. This is a waste of the council's time. Chairman Vross held up one crystalline hand. Dr. Velshaw, the council appreciates your research. However, we must deal with present matters, not ancient history. File your reports with the Archaeological Society. If anything significant develops, inform us. Velshaw's scales dimmed with disappointment, but she nodded and sat down. Xyloth felt sorry for her. She had made an interesting discovery. But in a galaxy of 47 star systems and 12 species, who cared about ghosts from the past? The meeting continued for 2 more hours. Discussions about food shipments, about new colonies, about a minor territorial dispute between the Quarim and the Seldry that had been going on for 3 years. Boring, safe, predictable things. This was the galaxy now. Peaceful, organized, maybe a little too comfortable. Finally, the meeting ended. The ambassadors began to leave, heading to their ships or to their quarters on Nexus Prime. Xyloth stopped beside Velsha, who was gathering her data tablets. "I found your presentation interesting," he said. She looked up, surprised. "Thank you, Ambassador. I know most think I'm chasing shadows." "Perhaps," Xyloth said, "but shadows are interesting. I remember the stories from when I was young. The legends of Terra. We were told they were just myths. Maybe they were once real," Velsha said, "before they became myths." Xyloth nodded and left her there. He walked through the crystal corridors of the council building, looking out at the city below. Nexus Prime was beautiful, with towers that reached toward the sky and gardens that mixed plants from a dozen worlds. Ships came and went from the spaceport, carrying goods and passengers across the coalition. It was a good life, a peaceful life. His people had not fought a real war in over 200 years. Neither had most of the coalition species. They had disputes, yes, but those were settled with words and laws, not weapons. They had created something remarkable. A civilization where different species could live together without fear. But sometimes Xyloth wondered if they had become soft. The coalition navy was large, but it existed mostly for show and to patrol against pirates. The ships were comfortable, the crews well-trained in regulations and procedures, but not in actual combat. Why would they need to be? There were no enemies, no threats, just the peaceful routine of daily life. He reached his quarters and was preparing for sleep when his communicator chimed. It was urgent, marked with the highest priority codes. "Ambassador Xyloth," said the voice of his aide, a young Kryn named Selk. "You need to come to the observation center immediately. The council is being recalled." "What? Why?" "It's the middle of the night cycle." "Sir, our deep space sensors have detected something impossible." Xyloth dressed quickly and hurried to the observation center, located in the tallest tower of Nexus Prime. When he arrived, he found the room full of people. All the ambassadors were there, along with military officers and scientists. Everyone was staring at the massive display screen that showed a map of known space. Admiral Krenix, a 4-armed Seldry who commanded the Coalition Navy, pointed at the screen with 2 of his hands. 3 hours ago, our sensor stations on the galactic rim detected multiple contacts. Very large contacts. "Pirates?" asked Ambassador Film. "No," Krenix said flatly. "Too large, too many. We're tracking at least 200 distinct signatures, possibly more. They appeared at the edge of our sensor range and are moving in formation toward Coalition space." "An invasion?" Thruck's fur bristled. "By whom?" "There are no species beyond the Coalition except a few primitives who haven't developed spaceflight." "We don't know," Krenix admitted. "We've sent scout ships to investigate, but they won't reach the contacts for another 6 hours. But there's something else. Something strange." He brought up another image. It showed the sensor signature of one of the unknown ships. Next to it was another signature, this one labeled Archaeological Data, Sigma 7 Station. They matched. The room went silent. Xyloth felt his scales go cold, shifting to deep blue and purple. "No, it couldn't be." "Dr. Velsha," Chairman Vross said quietly, "please bring up your presentation from today. The images of human vessels." Velsha, who had been called in with everyone else, worked the controls with shaking hands. The holographic images of ancient human ships appeared, drawn from the old archives. Blocky, aggressive designs covered with weapons and armor. Next to them, she placed the sensor readings. The silhouettes matched. "It's not possible," Throck whispered, his usual confidence gone. "They're myths. They're extinct. They've been gone for 500 years. Unless," Velsha said softly, "they were never gone, unless they've been out there all this time, beyond our sensors, beyond our knowledge." Ambassador Film's body pulsed with bioluminescence, a sign of fear in his species. The old text said humans were warriors. If they're returning with an armada of that size, "We don't know their intentions," Chairman Vross said, trying to keep calm. "They may be peaceful. They may simply be passing through. We should not jump to conclusions. An armada of 200 warships does not suggest peaceful intentions. Krennic said bluntly, I recommend we mobilize the fleet immediately. Prepare defensive positions around the core worlds. Do it, Ross ordered, but also prepare a first contact team. If these are truly humans, if they are truly returning after all this time, we must try to communicate. Dr. Velsha, you know more about humans than anyone else in the Coalition. I'm assigning you to the first contact team. Velsha's scales went pale. Me? But I'm just a historian, not a diplomat. You're our expert on humanity, Ross said firmly. We need you. The room burst into activity as orders were given and received. Xyloth stood at the window looking out at the peaceful stars. 500 years ago, humans had vanished. Now they were returning, but why? What had they been doing all this time? And most importantly, what did they want? He thought about the old stories again. About warriors who never surrendered. About a species that could survive anything. About the words Velsha had quoted. Humanity does not go gentle into that good night. The Coalition had lived in peace for so long. They had forgotten what it meant to be afraid. They had forgotten that the universe could be dangerous. Perhaps, Xyloth thought as he watched ships begin to launch from the spaceport, they were about to remember. The legends were returning, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first system went dark on a Tuesday. Kilo Station, a mining colony on the outer rim, simply stopped transmitting. One moment the routine communications were coming through normally, workers complaining about shift schedules and requesting supplies. The next moment, nothing but silence. At first, the Coalition assumed it was a technical problem. Equipment failed sometimes. Communication arrays needed maintenance. They sent a message telling Kalos to repair their transmitters and report in. No response came. By Friday, 2 more systems had gone silent. Deneb Colony and the agricultural world of Harvest. Over 3 million people, gone quiet as a grave. Admiral Krennic stood in the command center of the Coalition flagship Daybreak, staring at the tactical display. His forearms were crossed over his chest and his silver eyes were dark with worry. Around him, officers worked at their stations, their faces showing the same concern he felt. Scout ships are approaching Kilos now, reported his tactical officer. We should have visuals in 30 seconds. The room went quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing to watch the main screen. The scout ship's camera showed the approach to Kilos Station. The system's star burned bright and steady. The planets were in their normal orbits. Everything looked fine. Then they got close enough to see Kilos Station itself. By the ancestors, someone whispered. The station was still there, but it was wrong. The metal hull had been stripped away in places, leaving bare framework exposed to space. The viewing ports that should have glowed with internal lights were dark. And covering every surface was something that looked like black coral or crystalline growth, spreading across the station like a disease. Life signs? Krennic asked, though he already knew the answer. None, sir. No power signatures. No heat, no movement. The station is completely dead. Take us in closer. I want to see. Krennic stopped as something moved on the screen. From behind the station, shapes emerged. They looked like ships, but wrong. Organic. They had curved hulls that seemed to pulse and move, covered with the same black crystalline growth as the station. Red lights glowed from within them like infected wounds. Multiple contacts, the tactical officer shouted. 20. No, 40. They're everywhere. They're swarming the scout ship. On the screen, the organic ships moved with terrible speed and coordination. They surrounded the Coalition scout ship like insects around prey. The scout fired its defensive weapons, bright beams of energy that struck the organic ships and burned through their hulls. But for every ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. They latched onto the scout ship's hull and began spreading that black crystalline growth across it. The scout systems began failing one by one. They're trying to transmit, the communications officer said urgently, patching it through. The speakers crackled with static and the voice of the scout ship's captain, a Kryn named Selos. Mayday! Mayday, they're on the hull! They're eating through the transmission cut off in a scream. On screen, the black growth consumed the scout ship in less than a minute. When it was done, the ship hung dead in space, just another piece of lifeless metal covered in that terrible infection. Then the organic ships turned toward the camera, toward the relay satellite that was transmitting the feed. The screen went black. "Get me Chairman Vross," Krennic said quietly, "and prepare the fleet for immediate deployment. We're going to war." 2 days later, the Coalition Navy assembled at Deneb system with 300 ships. It was the largest military gathering in 200 years. The fleet included vessels from all 12 species, ranging from small fast attack craft to massive battle cruisers 5 kilometers long. Xyloth was there, aboard the Daybreak as an official observer. He stood on the bridge next to Dr. Velsha, who had also been brought along for her expertise. Neither of them wanted to be there, but the council had insisted. This was history being made for good or ill. "Fleet in position," Krennic reported to the captains of his ships. "We go in formation. Stay together. Watch each other's backs. We don't know exactly what we're facing, but we know it's hostile. Fire at will on any of the organic vessels. Our objective is to secure Deneb Station and rescue any survivors." The fleet moved forward as one, entering the Deneb system in a coordinated jump. They emerged near the colony world and immediately saw what they were facing. The planet Deneb had been a beautiful place covered in forests and oceans. Now looking at it from space, they could see black patches spreading across the continents like mold on fruit. The orbital stations were covered in the same growth, and surrounding the planet was a swarm of the organic ships. Thousands of them. "All ships, engage," Krennic ordered. The battle began. Coalition ships had powerful weapons. Particle beams that could cut through armor like paper. Missiles that could track targets across light seconds of distance. Point defense systems that could shoot down incoming fire with precision accuracy. For the first 10 minutes, it looked like the Coalition would win easily. Their weapons tore through the organic ships, destroying dozens with every salvo. The alien vessels seemed almost fragile, exploding in bursts of green fluid and crystal fragments when hit. Then the swarm began to adapt. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, "the enemy vessels are changing. Their hulls are getting harder. Our weapons are losing effectiveness." Xyloth watched in horror as the organic ships began modifying themselves in real time. Their crystal growths shifted and restructured, creating armor that reflected energy beams and absorbed missile impacts. They moved differently too, learning to dodge and weave in patterns that made them harder to hit. And they were learning the Coalition's tactics. When a Coalition ship fired, the swarm would immediately converge on it, overwhelming its defenses with sheer numbers. They worked together with perfect coordination, like fingers on a single hand. "We're losing ships," Krennic reported grimly. "The Starlight just went down. The Prosperity is reporting hull breaches on multiple decks." "They're like a hive mind," Velsha said, her scales pale with fear. "Every ship is connected. When one learns something, they all learn it. We can't surprise them." "Then we need to kill them faster than they can adapt," Krennic growled. "All ships concentrate fire. Target Alpha pattern." The Coalition fleet focused their weapons on one section of the swarm, trying to punch through with overwhelming force. It worked for a moment. A gap opened in the swarm's formation, and several Coalition ships pushed through toward the planet. But the swarm closed the gap like water flowing around a stone. The ships that had pushed through found themselves surrounded, cut off from the main fleet. Xyloth watched helplessly as the organic vessels swarmed over them, that black crystal growth spreading across their hulls, eating through their armor, consuming everything. The battle raged for 6 hours. 6 hours of constant fighting, of watching ships explode and die, of hearing the last transmissions of crews who knew they were doomed. The Coalition fought bravely. They fought with everything they had. But they were losing. "Admiral," the tactical officer said, his voice shaking, "we've lost 80 ships, 80. That's more than a quarter of our fleet. And the swarm is still growing. There are more of them now than when we started." "How is that possible?" Xyloth asked. "They're building more ships," Velsha said, pointing at the planet on the screen. "Look at the surface. Those black patches. They're converting the planet's resources into more of themselves. The more they consume, the more they grow. They're not an army. They're a plague." Krennic closed all 4 of his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, Xyloth could see the defeat there. The Admiral had fought in minor skirmishes before against pirates and raiders. But this was different. This was an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be frightened, couldn't be beaten with conventional tactics. "All ships," Krennic said quietly, "begin retreat. We fall back to defensive positions around the core worlds." "Sir, what about the colony? What about any survivors?" an officer protested. "There are no survivors," Krennic said flatly. "Anyone still alive down there is already dead. We just haven't buried them yet. Now retreat before we lose the entire fleet." The coalition fleet began pulling back and the swarm let them go. Why wouldn't they? They had won. They had claimed another system. And now they would consume everything on that planet before moving on to the next one. As the daybreak jumped away to safety, Xyloth stood at a viewport watching the Deneb system disappear. 3 systems lost, millions dead, and the coalition's mighty fleet had been beaten like children fighting adults. "We're not ready for this," he said to Velsha. "We haven't fought a real war in 2 centuries. We don't know how." "No," she agreed, her voice small. "We don't." For the next 2 weeks, the coalition scrambled to build defenses. They pulled back their civilian populations from the outer rim. They positioned their remaining fleet around key systems. They sent desperate messages to their allies calling for support, but everyone knew the truth. The swarm would come. It would adapt to whatever defenses they built. It would consume world after world until there was nothing left but dead rock covered in black crystal. The council met every day now, arguing about strategies and options. Some wanted to abandon the outer colonies entirely and make a last stand around Nexus Prime. Others wanted to build massive fleets and counterattack. A few even suggested trying to make peace with the swarm, though Velsha explained that peace with a hive mind that consumed biological matter was impossible. On the 15th day after the battle at Deneb, Velsha came to Xyloth's quarters in the middle of the night. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her scales were dull and her eyes were red. "I found something," she said. "In the archives. Something I missed before." She pulled out a data tablet and showed him an image. It was an old document, barely readable, written in what the translation software identified as pre-coalition common speech. "This is a transmission," she explained, "sent from Earth 500 years ago, just before they disappeared. Most of it is corrupted, but I was able to recover a few sections." Xyloth read the translated text. "The enemy consumes everything. Hive mind impossible to negotiate. Lost 17 colonies. Earth High Command has authorized the Nova Protocol. If we survive this, we cannot return to known space. Our presence draws them. We will lead them away, into the dark. Hunt them in the void where they cannot threaten others. To whoever reads this, if you face an enemy that cannot be stopped, that adapts to everything, that consumes worlds, send a message to the old coordinates. We will be listening. We will come." "This is it," Velsha said, her voice shaking. 500 years ago, humans fought something like the swarm. Maybe the same species, maybe something similar, and they survived, but they had to leave. They sacrificed everything to protect the galaxy from whatever they were fighting. And now they've been out there all this time," Xyloth said slowly, understanding dawning. "Hunting, fighting. While we've been living in peace, they've been at war in the darkness." "The sensor contacts we detected," Velsha continued. "The Armada heading toward Coalition space. What if it's not an invasion? What if they somehow learned about the swarm attacking us? What if they're coming to help?" Xyloth looked at the document again. The old coordinates were listed at the bottom. "Earth's last known position. The Council needs to see this," he said. "We need to try to contact them." "I already tried," Velsha admitted. "I sent a message to those coordinates 2 days ago using every frequency I could think of. I used the old human languages that I've learned from the archives. I told them we were facing extinction, that we needed help." "Did you get authorization from the Council?" "No," she said defiantly. "I didn't think they would approve. They still aren't sure humans are real. But Ambassador Xyloth, we're dying. System by system, world by world, we're being erased. If there's even a chance that humans are out there, that they're coming, that they remember their old promise to protect life in this galaxy, we have to take it." Xyloth put a hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing. If the Council punishes you for it, I'll stand with you." They stood together in silence, looking out at the stars. Out there somewhere, the swarm was consuming another world, and somewhere else maybe an armada was heading their way. Humans, the warrior race, the legends from childhood stories. Xyloth found himself hoping, desperately hoping, that the legends were real. Because if they weren't, the Coalition had about 2 months left to live. Maybe less. The sky above Nexus Prime had never been so dark. Thousands of ships filled the orbital space around the Coalition capital world. Every vessel that could fly had been called back for the final defense. Military ships, cargo haulers, even civilian yachts modified with whatever weapons could be attached to them. It wasn't an organized fleet anymore. It was desperation given metal form. Xyloth stood on the observation deck of the Planetary Defense Station, watching the preparations. All around him, people worked frantically. Engineers reinforced shields. Weapons officers checked firing solutions over and over. Medical teams prepared emergency aid stations for the wounded that everyone knew were coming. 3 more systems had fallen since Deneb. The swarm had crossed the coalition's defensive line like it wasn't even there. They adapted to every weapon, every tactic, every trick the coalition tried, and they kept coming, spreading across space like spilled ink. The evacuation ships were already leaving. Millions of people packed into vessels designed for thousands, fleeing toward the edge of coalition space, hoping to find somewhere safe. But everyone knew the truth. There was nowhere safe. The swarm would reach everywhere eventually. 14 hours, said Admiral Krenix, who had joined Xyloth at the viewport. The Seldry admiral looked old now, his silver skin dull and tired. That's how long until they reach this system. Maybe 16 if we're lucky. And then, Xyloth asked, then we fight until we can't fight anymore. We buy time for the evacuation ships to get away. We make the swarm pay for every meter of space. Krenix's 4 arms tensed. We die well. That's a lot of death for very little purpose, said a soft voice behind them. They turned to see Dr. Velsha approaching. She hadn't slept in what looked like days. Her scales were almost gray with exhaustion, but her eyes still burned with intensity. Any word from your message? Krenix asked. He knew about the transmission she had sent to the old Earth coordinates. The Council had been furious when they found out, but it didn't matter now. Nothing mattered except the swarm. Nothing, Velsha admitted. It's been 3 weeks. If humans are out there, they either didn't receive it or they're not coming. Then we face this alone, Xyloth said. As we always have. The Council is preparing to broadcast the Coalition's final records, Krenix said quietly. Everything we've learned, everything we've discovered, all our history and knowledge. We're encoding it and sending it to every corner of the galaxy. Maybe someone someday will find it. We'll know we existed. It was perhaps the saddest thing Xyloth had ever heard. The sum total of 12 species achievements reduced to a message in a bottle, thrown into an infinite ocean. I should return to the bridge, Krenix said. If these are my last hours, I'll spend them with my crew. He clasped Xyloth's shoulder with one hand. It's been an honor, Ambassador. And for me, Admiral. Krenix left. Xyloth and Velsha stood together, watching the frantic activity outside. Ships moving into defensive positions, weapons platforms activating, everyone preparing for an end they couldn't stop. I really thought they would come, Velsha said softly. I read all the old records. Everything about humans. They never abandoned anyone who called for help. That's what the records said. That's what made them different. Perhaps they're all dead, Xyloth offered. 500 years is a long time even for legends. Perhaps, Velsha agreed. But she didn't sound convinced. An alarm suddenly blared through the station. Red lights began flashing. Xyloth's communicator chirped urgently. Ambassador Xyloth, report to command immediately, a voice said. We have a situation, they ran. Through corridors packed with people, past soldiers suiting up in combat armor, past families saying goodbye. They reached the command center and found it in chaos. Officers shouting, screens flashing warnings. Chairman Vross stood in the center, his crystalline body glowing bright red with alarm. What's happening? Xyloth demanded. The swarm, Vross said. They're early. They've entered the system. And he paused, his color shifting to confused purple. And something else. Something impossible. The main screen showed the tactical display of the Nexus system. There on the edge of sensor range was the swarm. Thousands of organic ships moving in their terrible coordinated swarm pattern, heading directly for Nexus Prime. But there was something else on the screen. Different contacts. Hundreds of them, appearing in flashes of energy that the sensors couldn't quite identify. Jump signatures, the tactical officer reported. But unlike anything we've seen, the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever's creating those jumps is using power levels we can't even measure. The swarm? Someone asked. No, sir. These are different. They're forming up between us and the swarm. Like they're blocking them. Show me visual, Vross ordered. The screen changed. The camera zoomed in on the new contacts, trying to focus through the interference and distance. At first, all they could see were shapes. Large shapes. Then the image cleared. Xyloth heard someone gasp. Someone else prayed to their gods. Velsha gripped his arm so hard it hurt. The ships were massive, larger than anything the Coalition had ever built. They were blocky and angular, covered with armor plating and weapon emplacements, no sleek curves or artistic designs. These ships were built for one purpose only: war. And on the hull of every vessel, in letters 300 meters high, was a symbol. The same symbol from Velsha's research: a blue world with green continents and white clouds, Earth. "It's them," Velsha whispered. "It's really them." The sky above Nexus Prime began to darken as more ships appeared. Cruisers, destroyers, battleships, carriers larger than cities, weapons platforms covered in guns. And at the center, a flagship that dwarfed everything else, a vessel so massive it looked like a small moon had jumped into the system. Hundreds of ships, all human, all armed, all moving with military precision that made the Coalition's attempts at organization look like children playing pretend. The command center had gone completely silent. Everyone stared at the screen in awe and fear. This was an armada, a real armada, the kind that could conquer galaxies if it wanted to. "Are we sure they're here to help us?" someone asked quietly. "And not conquer us?" Before anyone could answer, the communications console lit up like a festival display. Every frequency, every channel, all receiving the same transmission. "Someone's calling us," the communications officer said, his voice shaking. "It's coming from the flagship. It's being broadcast in Coalition Standard. Perfect Coalition Standard." "Put it through," Frost ordered. The speakers crackled. Then a voice came through. Deep, calm, human. "This is Fleet Admiral Nakamura of the United Earth Systems Defense Force, 3rd Fleet. We received your distress call. Hold your position. We're taking it from here." The command center erupted, people shouting questions all at once. But the transmission continued. "To the hostile vessels advancing on this system. You have entered space under the protection of the Terran Guard. You will cease your advance immediately or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply." "Will they really give them a chance to surrender?" someone asked. Velsha shook her head. "Look at their weapons. They're already charging. The surrender offer is for us. So we know they tried. So we know they follow rules of war." On screen, the swarm didn't slow down. They didn't change course. The hive mind didn't understand surrender. It only understood consumption. 30 seconds passed. "Target all hostile vessels," Admiral Nakamura's voice said calmly. "Fire at will." The human fleet opened fire. Xyloth had seen battles before. He had watched the Coalition fleet fight at Deneb. He thought he understood what warfare looked like. He understood nothing. The human ships unleashed destruction on a scale that defied belief. Energy beams that burned so bright they had to dim the viewing screens. Railguns that fired solid metal slugs at relativistic speeds, each impact releasing nuclear-level energy. Missiles that numbered in the thousands, each one tracking and adjusting in flight, each one smarter than most Coalition computers. The swarm's organic ships tried to adapt. They shifted their hulls, grew new armor, changed their formations. It didn't matter. The humans compensated instantly, switching weapons, adjusting tactics, hitting them from new angles. "They're not giving the swarm time to adapt," Velsha said with sudden understanding. "Every few seconds, they're changing their attack patterns, using different weapons, different approaches. The swarm's advantage is that it learns, but you can't learn when your enemy keeps changing the lesson." The battle moved with brutal efficiency. The human ships worked together like parts of a single organism. When one ship was threatened, 3 others would shift to cover it. When a swarm ship tried to flank, human vessels would already be there, cutting it off. And they were aggressive. Coalition doctrine was defensive, focused on protecting positions and minimizing casualties. The humans didn't defend. They attacked. They pushed forward into the swarm, breaking its formation, isolating sections and destroying them before moving on to the next target. "Sir," the tactical officer said, his voice full of awe, "the swarm is... they're retreating. They're actually pulling back." It was true. The organic ships, which had never shown fear or hesitation, were trying to escape. But the humans didn't let them. Faster ships broke from the formation, chasing down the fleeing swarm vessels and destroying them one by one. In 30 minutes, it was over. The swarm that had been heading for Nexus Prime was gone, destroyed, scattered, broken. The command center was silent again, but this time it was the silence of shock, of not quite believing what they had just witnessed. "Admiral Nakamura is calling again," the communications officer said. "Put him through," Voss said. "Coalition Command, this is Nakamura. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We're deploying patrol groups to sweep the system for any remaining hostiles. We'd like to send a shuttle to Nexus Prime to coordinate with your leadership. We have a lot to talk about." Voss looked around the room at the other council members who had gathered. Throck looked like he was in shock, his fur standing on end. Film was pulsing rapidly with bioluminescence. Even the usually composed Voss was shifting through rainbow colors. "Tell them," Voss paused, gathering himself. "Tell them they are welcome and thank them. Thank them for answering our call." "Acknowledged," Nakamura said. "Shuttle will arrive in 30 minutes. Nakamura out." The transmission ended. For a moment, no one moved. Then Throck started laughing. A deep, booming laugh that echoed through the command center. "They're real," he shouted. "By all the stars, they're actually real. The legends are real!" Others joined in, laughing and crying with relief and joy and disbelief all at once. They had been hours from death. The evacuation ships were still running. The defensive positions were still manned. Everyone had been preparing to die. And then the sky had darkened with humanity's return. Xyloth found himself laughing too, holding on to Velsha as she cried happy tears. They were alive. Against all possible odds, they were alive. "I told you," Velsha said between sobs. "I told you they would come." "You did," Xyloth agreed. "You were right, and we were all fools not to believe you." 30 minutes later, a human shuttle landed at the spaceport. It was escorted by 6 fighter craft that moved with impossible agility, doing aerial maneuvers that would have torn coalition vessels apart with G-forces. The shuttle doors opened and Admiral Nakamura emerged. He was human, actually human, not a myth or a story but a real person walking down the landing ramp. He was tall, over 2 meters, with dark hair graying at the temples and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He wore a dark blue uniform covered with insignia and medals, and he moved with the confidence of someone who had fought 1,000 battles and won. Behind him came 6 other humans. Some men, some women, different skin colors and features, but all with that same look. That warrior's look. That certainty that they were the most dangerous things on the field. Xyloth, Voss, and Velsha met them at the landing pad. Xyloth wasn't sure what to say. How did you greet a legend that just saved your entire civilization? Admiral Nakamura made it easy. He stopped in front of them and gave a slight bow. "Chairman Voss, I presume?" "I'm Fleet Admiral James Nakamura. It's good to finally meet you." "Admiral," Voss managed. We cannot thank you enough. You saved us. You saved all of us." Nakamura's expression didn't change. His eyes remained cold, calculating. "Don't thank us yet. What you just saw was a scouting force, a small fragment of the main swarm. The real fight hasn't started." His words hit like physical blows. That had been a small force? That unstoppable tide that had destroyed system after system. "How many more are there?" Xyloth asked. Nakamura looked at him directly. Xyloth felt pinned by that gaze, like being examined by a predator deciding if you were prey. "Millions," Nakamura said simply. "The swarm you've been fighting is just the leading edge. Behind them is a mass that would take weeks to count. They've been moving through this region of space for centuries, consuming everything. We've been tracking them, fighting them, and now they've reached you." "Then we're still doomed," Film said quietly. "No," Nakamura said firmly. "You're not. Because you did something very smart. You called for help, and humanity never ignores a distress call." He turned to look at the sky, where the human fleet still hung in orbit like silent guardians. "We've been preparing for this fight for 500 years, he said. "We've been hunting the swarm across the dark spaces, learning their patterns, developing weapons and tactics specifically to kill them. They nearly destroyed us once. We won't let them destroy anyone else." "Why?" Velsha asked suddenly. "Why do you protect us?" "You don't know us. We abandoned you in the old days. When you needed help during your ancient war, why come back?" Nakamura turned to her. For the first time, something that might have been a smile touched his face. "Because someone has to," he said simply. "Because we can. And because no species should face extinction alone. He gestured toward the command center. Now, shall we discuss battle plans? We have a swarm to destroy. The command center had been transformed into a war room. Human officers worked alongside coalition personnel, setting up holographic displays and tactical systems that made the coalition's technology look primitive by comparison. Three-dimensional maps of entire star systems floated in the air, showing swarm movements in red and human fleet positions in blue. Admiral Nakamura stood at the center of it all, calm and controlled while chaos swirled around him. He had been talking with coalition leadership for 3 hours now, explaining the situation. The swarm operates on simple principles, he said, pointing at the display. Consume, adapt, spread. They're not intelligent in the way you think of intelligence. They don't have culture or goals beyond survival and growth. They're more like a biological machine than a civilization. How do you fight something like that? Admiral Krennic asked. The Seldry officer had been studying the human tactics with intense focus, trying to understand. You don't give them time to adapt, said Commander Chen, one of Nakamura's officers. She was a short woman with sharp eyes and scars on her hands. The swarm's strength is learning. They encounter a weapon, they analyze it, they grow resistance to it. But analysis takes time, so we hit them fast, hit them hard, and keep changing our approach. You also hit them everywhere at once, Nakamura added. The swarm is a hive mind. When you attack one part, the whole organism responds. That creates openings elsewhere. We exploit those openings. Velsha was recording everything, her tablet filling with notes. She had been right about humans. They were warriors, but they were also scholars of war, turning violence into a science. There's something else you should know, Nakamura said, his voice becoming harder. The swarm we're facing now is called the Void Swarm in human records. 512 years ago, they attacked Earth and the Old Alliance. We fought them for 27 years. They consumed 43 colonies. We lost 6 billion people. The room went quiet. 6 billion. The number was almost too large to comprehend. How did you survive? Siloth asked. Barely, Nakamura said. We threw everything at them. Every weapon. Every strategy. We burned our own worlds rather than let the swarm take them. And in the final battle, we deployed something we called the Nova Protocol. He brought up another display. It showed a weapon schematic. The design made coalition engineers gasp. You made a weapon that could collapse a star, one of them whispered. We made a weapon that could destroy the swarm's central nexus, Nakamura corrected. The hive mind has a core, a massive organic structure that coordinates all the individual organisms. Think of it as their brain. Kill the brain, and the body dies, or at least becomes scattered and uncoordinated. We used the Nova Protocol on their nexus, Commander Chen continued. It worked. The swarm broke apart, scattered across space. We thought we'd won, but, Frost prompted. But the swarm can regrow, Nakamura said grimly. Given enough time and resources, the scattered pieces can form new nexuses, new hive minds. We realized we had two choices. Return to the Old Alliance and pretend the threat was gone, knowing it would eventually return. Or hunt them, Velsha finished. Track every piece. Destroy them before they could reform. Exactly, Nakamura nodded. Earth made a decision. We would leave known space. We would tell everyone we were dead, gone, extinct. And we would hunt the swarm in the dark places where no one else would have to face them. For 500 years, Throck said in awe. 500 years of war. We've lost entire generations who've never seen Earth except in pictures, Nakamura said. His voice stayed level, but Xyloth could hear the weight of centuries behind it. Children born on warships. Families who've known nothing but combat. We've become something different from what we were. We've become the Terran Guard, humanity's sword in the darkness. And now the swarm has found us, Xyloth said. Now they've found you, Nakamura agreed. Which means we were sloppy. We missed pieces. Let them grow too large. For that I apologize. But we're here now and we're going to finish what we started 500 years ago. He swept his hand across the display. The swarm's main body is 3 jumps from here, consuming a cluster of uninhabited systems. They're building strength for a final push toward your core worlds. We're going to hit them first. Full assault. Every ship we have. How many ships do you have? Krennic asked. In this sector? About 2,000, Nakamura said casually. The coalition officers stared. 2,000 warships. The entire coalition navy at its peak had been 300. This is going to be the largest battle humanity has fought in 3 centuries. Commander Chen said. We're throwing everything at them. And we could use your help. Whatever you need, Vross said immediately. All our resources, our ships, our people. We're in this together. Nakamura studied the coalition leaders for a moment. Then he nodded. Appreciated. We'll integrate your ships into our formation. Assign them defensive roles to protect key positions. Your people are brave, but you don't have the training or equipment for frontline assault against the swarm. No offense, but none taken, Krennic said. We've seen what they can do. We'll help however we can. Good, Nakamura said. We move in 6 hours. Get your people ready. The next 6 hours passed in a blur. Human ships jumped into the system by the dozens, assembling a fleet so vast it looked like a second planet hanging in space. Coalition vessels joined them, looking tiny next to the massive human warships. Xyloth watched from the bridge of the Daybreak as the preparations continued. Human soldiers in powered armor boarded coalition ships, bringing advanced weapons and tactical systems. Human engineers helped upgrade coalition shields and weapons with technology that boosted their efficiency by 40%. They're sharing their technology with us, Velsha noted, watching the work crews. After 500 years of isolation, they're just giving it to us. They're practical, Xyloth said. They want us to survive this. Better to share knowledge than watch us die with outdated equipment. A human officer approached them. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with red hair tied back in a braid and cybernetic implants visible on her temple. Ambassador Xyloth, Dr. Velsha, I'm Lieutenant Reyes. Admiral Nakamura wanted me to brief you on what you'll be seeing in the battle. Since you're civilian observers, you need to understand what's about to happen. She pulled up a holographic display. This is going to get violent. Human doctrine is aggressive and overwhelming. We don't do clean surgical strikes. We do saturation bombardment and mass assault. It's not pretty, but it works. We understand, Xyloth said. I don't think you do, Reyes said gently. But you will. The fleet jumped together, a coordinated movement of over 2,000 ships. They emerged on the edge of a star system that had once been beautiful. 3 planets, 2 gas giants, an asteroid belt rich with minerals. Now it was hell. The planets were covered in black crystal growth. The asteroids had been consumed and reformed into organic ships. And in the center of the system, floating in space like a dark star, was the Nexus. It was massive, larger than moons, a spherical structure of organic tissue and crystal, pulsing with red light. And surrounding it were swarm ships beyond counting. They filled space like a storm cloud, millions of them, all connected to the Nexus through invisible threads of hive consciousness. Dear gods, Krennic whispered. How do we fight that? Watch and learn. Admiral Nakamura's voice came through the communication system. All ships, this is Nakamura. Remember your training. Trust your crews. And know that humanity stands with you. For Terra. For Terra. The response came from 2,000 ships at once, human voices shouting as one. The battle began. The human fleet split into multiple groups, each one driving toward the swarm from a different angle. They moved fast, their engines pushing them to speeds that coalition ships couldn't match. And they fired as they moved. The weapons were incredible. Particle lances that burned through swarm ships like paper. Railguns that punched holes through dozens of vessels with single shots. Missile pods that released thousands of smart munitions, each one hunting its own target. But it was the tactics that amazed Xyloth most. The humans fought like they'd been doing this all their lives. Because they had. 500 years of war had taught them lessons the Coalition had never dreamed of. They used their environment. When swarm ships tried to swarm a human cruiser, it would lead them past a human battleship that would fire into the group, destroying them all. They used their own damaged ships as bait, drawing swarm vessels into kill zones, and they adapted constantly. Every 30 seconds, they would switch weapons or change formation. The swarm tried to learn, tried to adapt, but the humans never gave them the same pattern twice. Strike Group 7. You have swarm concentration at Mark 37, Commander Chen's voice directed. Hit them with kinetics, then pull back before they can respond. Copy that. Launching kinetics now. Hundreds of metal slugs, each one moving at significant fractions of light speed, tore through the swarm formation. The organic ships exploded, their crystalline bodies shattering like glass. Medical ships, we have casualties from Strike Group 3. Moving to rendezvous point. Understood. We're ready for them. The battle was organized chaos. Humans shouting orders, ships exploding, weapons firing in continuous storms of light and energy, and through it all the human fleet pushed forward, driving toward the Nexus at the center. "They're protecting the Nexus," Reyes said, pointing at the display. "See how the swarm ships are clustering around it? They know it's their weak point. Can you reach it?" Velsha asked. "Watch." The human carrier, the massive flagship, launched something. At first Xyloth thought they were missiles. Then he realized they were pods, thousands of them shooting toward the Nexus in streams. "What are those?" he asked. "Marines," Reyes said with a fierce grin. "Boarding pods. We're going to take that Nexus from the inside." The pods were shot at by swarm ships, but human fighters protected them, weaving through the defensive fire with impossible skill. The pods crashed into the Nexus's surface and began burning through. "You're putting soldiers inside that thing?" Xyloth asked in horror. "It's what we do," Reyes said simply. On a secondary display, Xyloth could see camera feeds from the Marines. They wore powered armor that made them look like walking tanks, carrying weapons that could destroy vehicles, and they were fighting inside the Nexus, burning through organic tissue, shooting swarm creatures that tried to stop them. It was brutal. It was violent. It was warfare at its most primitive and direct. And it was effective. "Fire teams advancing to target zones," a Marine sergeant reported, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "Heavy resistance, but nothing we can't handle." "Copy that, Sergeant Harris. Deploy the charges when ready." "Roger. We brought enough boom for the whole party." The Marines fought their way deeper into the Nexus, while the fleet outside kept the swarm busy. Xyloth watched human soldiers die, watched them torn apart by swarm creatures or consumed by the organic structure. But for every human who fell, 10 more pushed forward. They reached the core of the Nexus. Xyloth could see it on the feeds, a massive chamber filled with pulsing tissue and glowing energy. The heart of the hive mind. "Charges placed," Sergeant Harris reported. "All teams pull back to extraction points. We're lighting this candle in 2 minutes." The Marines retreated, fighting their way back to the surface while the countdown ticked down. The swarm seemed to realize what was happening. The attacks intensified. More ships threw themselves at the human fleet in desperate waves. "All ships pull back to safe distance," Nakamura ordered. "Prepare for Nova Protocol activation." The fleet began retreating, still firing, still protecting each other. The Marines extracted, their pods launching from the Nexus and racing back to their ships. 10 seconds, Nakamura said. His voice was still calm, still controlled. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, execute. The Nexus exploded. But it wasn't a normal explosion. This was something else. The charges the Marines had planted were doing something to the Nexus's internal structure, causing it to collapse on itself. The entire massive sphere began imploding, pulling everything nearby toward it. Swarm ships caught in the pull were torn apart. The organic structure of the Nexus ripped into pieces. And at the center, reality seemed to fold in on itself as the Nova Protocol weapon did its terrible work. When it was over, nothing remained but debris and scattered swarm ships, floating without direction or purpose. "Nexus destroyed," Commander Chen reported. "The swarm is breaking apart. Individual vessels are still active but uncoordinated." "All ships begin cleanup operations," Nakamura ordered. "I want every swarm vessel in this system destroyed. No survivors, no second chances." The human fleet spread out, hunting down the remaining swarm ships one by one. It took hours, but they were thorough. By the time the sun rose on the nearest planet, the swarm was gone, completely eliminated. Xyloth sat in silence watching the aftermath. The battle had lasted 8 hours. The humans had lost 73 ships and over 10,000 soldiers. But they had won. They had destroyed something that the Coalition couldn't even slow down. "Now you understand," Reyes said quietly beside him. "This is what humanity became. This is what 500 years of war made us." "You're terrifying," Velsha said honestly. "Yes," Reyes agreed. "We are, but we're on your side. Remember that." Admiral Nakamura's face appeared on every screen in the fleet. "This is Nakamura to all ships. The swarm nexus in this sector is destroyed. The threat to Coalition space is eliminated, but our job isn't finished. There are other fragments of the swarm out there. Other nexuses growing. We'll hunt them all, and we'll teach the Coalition how to fight them too." He paused, his cold eyes seeming to look through the screen at each person watching. "Welcome to the real galaxy," he said. "It's darker and more dangerous than you knew, but you're not alone anymore. The transmission ended. Around the fleet, human soldiers cheered. They had won again. They would keep winning, because that was what humanity did. They endured. They adapted. They survived. And they never ever stopped fighting. 1 month after the battle, Nexus Prime looked different. Human ships still filled the orbital spaces, but they were joined now by coalition vessels being upgraded with new technology. In the shipyards, engineers from 12 species worked alongside human technicians, learning to build better shields, more efficient engines, stronger weapons. The streets below were different too. For the first time in 500 years, humans walked among other species. Not many yet. Most of humanity's military remained on patrol, hunting the last scattered pieces of the swarm. But enough had come to start the process of reintegration. It wasn't always easy. Xyloth watched from a cafe as a human soldier walked past, his powered armor making him tower over everyone else. People moved aside, some in respect, some in fear. Children stared with wide eyes. The soldier noticed and removed his helmet, revealing a young face with kind eyes. He smiled at the children and continued on his way. "They're trying," Velsha said, sitting across from Xyloth. She had become humanity's unofficial liaison, the one person in the coalition who understood them best. But it's hard for them. They've been at war for so long they don't remember how to be anything else. And it's hard for us, Xyloth admitted. They saved us. We owe them everything, but they're also frightening. We've never seen violence like what they showed us. "Welcome to reality," said a voice behind them. They turned to see Admiral Nakamura approaching. He wore a dress uniform now instead of combat gear, but he still moved like a predator, aware of everything around him. He sat down without asking, ordering something called coffee from the confused server. "Admiral," Xyloth greeted. "I didn't expect to see you planetside. I thought you'd be with the fleet." "Even admirals need breaks," Nakamura said. "Besides, I wanted to talk to you before the council meeting tomorrow." "Off the record. About?" Nakamura waited until his coffee arrived. He took a sip and grimaced. "You still can't make decent coffee. 500 years and no one learned how." He set the cup down. "Tomorrow, the Coalition Council is going to formally invite humanity to join. To become the 13th species in the Coalition. That's good news, isn't it?" Velsha asked. "Maybe," Nakamura said. "But I need you to understand something before that vote happens. Humanity isn't what you think we are. We're not heroes from your legends. We're soldiers who've been at war for 5 centuries. We're broken in ways you can't see. We carry trauma that goes back 20 generations. You saved us," Xyloth protested. "We did our job," Nakamura corrected. "It's what we're good at, what we've specialized in. But the Coalition needs to understand what they're inviting in." He leaned forward. "We have weapons that could destroy planets. We have tactics that would horrify civilians. We have soldiers who've known nothing but combat since they were old enough to hold a gun. That's what 500 years of war creates. Then why join us at all?" Velsha asked. "Why not stay independent like you have been?" Nakamura was quiet for a moment, looking out at the street. "Because we're tired," he said finally. "Because humanity has sacrificed enough. Because we want our children to see something other than battlefields. And because," he paused, "because we need to remember how to be more than just weapons. The Council will have conditions," Xyloth warned. "Regulations, oversight. We'll accept reasonable conditions," Nakamura said. "But understand this. Humanity will maintain military independence. We'll join the Coalition. We'll follow Coalition law. We'll be part of your society. But when it comes to defense, we answer to Earth High Command, not the Council." "They won't like that," Velsha said. "They don't have to like it," Nakamura said bluntly. "They need to understand it. The Coalition has lived in peace for centuries because you never faced a real threat. We've spent those same centuries fighting horrors you never dreamed of. The swarm you saw? They're just one threat among many out there. The galaxy is darker and more dangerous than you know." He stood up, leaving the terrible coffee untouched. "Tomorrow I'll be polite. I'll be diplomatic. I'll tell the Council what they want to hear. But tonight I'm telling you the truth. Humanity is joining the Coalition, but we're not doing it to be your saviors or your heroes. We're doing it because no species should face extinction alone, and because someone has to stand watch on the rim while everyone else sleeps peacefully." He walked away, leaving Xyloth and Velsha in silence. "He's right," Velsha said finally. "About everything. We've been living in a protected garden, never knowing about the predators outside the walls. Humanity has been fighting those predators for us. Without us even knowing, Xyloth added, without asking for thanks or recognition. The next day, the council chamber was packed. Every ambassador was present, along with military leaders, scientists, and representatives from all 12 coalition species. And sitting at a special position near the chairman was Admiral Nakamura, flanked by Commander Chen and 2 other human officers. Chairman Vross began the meeting formally. Today we vote on a historic matter. The coalition was founded 300 years ago by 12 species seeking peaceful coexistence. Today we propose to add a 13th, a species that we thought was legend, a species that has proven themselves as protectors and allies. The council recognizes Admiral James Nakamura of humanity. Nakamura stood. He looked different from yesterday, more composed, more diplomatic, but Xyloth could still see the soldier underneath. Chairman Vross honored council members, Nakamura began. 512 years ago, humanity left known space. We did so because we believed our presence brought danger to peaceful species. We believed that by removing ourselves, by hunting our enemies in the dark places beyond civilization, we could protect you without burdening you. We were wrong, he continued, not about the need to fight, but about isolation. The galaxy's threats are too large for any one species to face alone. The coalition learned that when the swarm attacked. Humanity learned that 5 centuries ago when we nearly died. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each ambassador. Earth wishes to join the coalition, to stand with you, to share our knowledge and our strength, to finally come home after half a millennium in the dark. But, he said firmly, we must be clear about our terms. Humanity will integrate into coalition society. We'll follow your laws. We'll contribute to your economy. We'll share our technology and our culture. But in matters of defense, we maintain independence. Earth High Command will coordinate with coalition forces, but our military remains under human authority. Ambassador Throck stood up, his silver fur bristling. Admiral, with respect, the coalition cannot have a member that operates outside our military structure. How can we trust? You can trust us, Nakamura interrupted, his voice cold, because we just saved your entire civilization and asked for nothing in return. You can trust us because we've been protecting you for 500 years without you even knowing. You can trust us because when you sent a desperate message to old Earth coordinates hoping someone would answer, we came with every ship we had. The chamber was silent. Throck sat down slowly. We're not asking to be special, Nakamura continued, his voice softening slightly. We're explaining reality. The Coalition Navy is excellent for peacekeeping and patrol, but you're not equipped for the threats that exist beyond your borders. We are. We've spent 5 centuries becoming the best at it. Let us keep doing what we do best while we learn from you how to be something more than soldiers. And what happens, Ambassador Filn asked carefully, when humanity decides the coalition is a threat? When you turn those weapons on us? Then you'll die, Nakamura said bluntly. Let's not pretend otherwise.
Yes, humanity could conquer the coalition if we wanted to.
We have the ships, the weapons, the experience, but we don't want to. We never did. If we wanted an empire, we could have built one 500 years ago. Instead, we chose exile to protect others. He paused. You're not asking if humanity is dangerous. You're asking if humanity is trustworthy. The answer is yes. Because we've proven it. Because we've sacrificed everything for an ideal most species abandoned. Because we believe in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Chairman Vross stood. The council will vote. All in favor of accepting humanity's proposal to join the coalition under the stated terms? One by one, hands rose. Some quickly, some slowly, some reluctantly. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. The motion passes, Vross announced. Welcome to the Galactic Coalition, humanity. May this be the beginning of a new era of cooperation and peace. Nakamura nodded. Thank you, Chairman. Earth accepts. The chamber erupted in applause, humans and aliens alike celebrating the moment. Xyloth found himself clapping, genuinely happy despite his concerns. They had gained powerful allies. More than that, they had gained protectors. But as the celebration continued, he watched Nakamura. The Admiral wasn't smiling. He wasn't celebrating. He was already looking at star charts on his data tablet, planning the next patrol, the next battle, the next threat. Later that evening, Xyloth found Nakamura in the military command center, studying tactical displays with his officers. Shouldn't you be at the celebration? Xyloth asked. I'm not much for parties, Nakamura said. Besides, we have work to do. We've identified 3 more potential swarm fragments in sectors beyond your borders, and there are other threats out there. Pirate kingdoms that make your local raiders look like children, rogue AI networks, species that view organic life as food. How long until the Coalition is ready to face those threats? Xyloth asked. Generations, Nakamura said honestly. You've been peaceful too long. It'll take time to build up your defensive capabilities. Train your people, change your culture to accept that violence is sometimes necessary. And in the meantime? In the meantime, humanity stands watch, Nakamura said. We'll patrol the rim. We'll guard the borders. We'll face the darkness so you don't have to, at least until you're ready to stand beside us. Commander Chen approached with a data pad. Admiral, the fleet is ready to deploy. Strike Group Alpha is heading to Sector 7. Strike Group Beta is investigating the AI network signals. Strike Group Gamma is on standby for Coalition support missions. Good, Nakamura said. I'll be joining Alpha. We ship out in 3 hours. Already? Xyloth asked, surprised. You just got humanity accepted into the Coalition. Don't you want to stay and help with the integration? That's for diplomats and politicians, Nakamura said. I'm a soldier. My place is with the fleet, he looked at Xyloth directly. Dr. Velsha will handle the integration. She understands both cultures. She'll do a better job than I could. She's just a historian, Xyloth protested. She's the person who believed in humanity when everyone else thought we were myths, Nakamura corrected. She's the one who sent the message that brought us here. She's earned the right to shape how our species interact. He began walking toward the launch bay and Xyloth followed. Admiral, one last question. Yesterday you said humanity is broken, that 500 years of war damaged you. How do you heal from that? Nakamura stopped walking. For a long moment he was silent. I don't know if we can, he admitted finally. Every human alive today is descended from soldiers. We've bred ourselves for war, trained ourselves for combat, shaped our entire culture around survival and violence. Maybe we've changed too much. Maybe we can never go back to being the humans that existed before. Or maybe, he continued, by joining the Coalition, by learning from species that have lived in peace, by seeing a galaxy that isn't just battlefields and enemies, we can become something new, not the old humanity and not the soldiers we've been, something in between. I hope you find that, Xyloth said sincerely. So do I, Nakamura said. But hope is for civilians. I deal in certainty. And what I'm certain of is that the Coalition needs protection, and humanity can provide it. Everything else will come with time. He reached the launch bay where a shuttle waited to take him back to his flagship. Before boarding, he turned back to Xyloth one last time. Tell your people something for me, he said. Tell them the universe is darker than they know. Tell them there are things out there that would make the swarm look merciful. Tell them humanity has been fighting those things, holding them back, keeping them away from the light. And tell them, he added, his voice becoming almost gentle, that they're safe now. That humanity will never let them face those threats alone, that we remember what it's like to nearly die, and we won't let it happen to anyone else. I'll tell them, Xyloth promised. Nakamura nodded and boarded the shuttle. Within minutes it was lifting off, heading back to the massive fleet that waited in orbit. Xyloth stood watching until the shuttle disappeared into the sky. Then he walked back through the city, seeing it with new eyes, the people going about their daily lives, the children playing in parks, the markets full of goods from a dozen worlds, all of it peaceful, all of it safe. Because out there, beyond the light of civilization, humanity stood watch. The legends had returned, not as conquerors or gods, but as guardians, tired, battle-scarred, broken in ways the Coalition couldn't understand, but still willing to fight, still willing to protect, still holding the line against the dark. 3 days later, Dr. Velsha received a message from Admiral Nakamura. It was brief, just a few lines. Strike Group Alpha has eliminated the swarm fragment in Sector 7. No Coalition casualties, no human casualties, just another day's work. Keep building bridges between our peoples. Someone has to. Nakamura out. She smiled and added the message to her growing archive of human communications. She was building a new database, documenting everything about humanity's return, their culture, their history, their integration into Coalition society. It would take years, decades, maybe centuries. But she had time, and she had purpose. In the sky above, a human patrol ship passed overhead, silent and watchful. Velsha waved even though she knew they couldn't see her. But maybe somehow they knew. Humanity had come home, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the command center on Earth, 500 light-years from Nexus Prime, an old man stood looking at a holographic display of known space. He was ancient, one of the few humans alive who had been born before the war, who remembered Earth before it became a military fortress. They accepted the offer, an aide told him. The old man nodded. Good, it's time. Time to stop hiding. Time to reconnect with the galaxy. Time to let our people remember what peace looks like. Will they ever truly be at peace? The aide asked. The old man smiled sadly. No, peace isn't in our nature anymore. But maybe our children's children will know it. Maybe by standing with the coalition, by teaching them to defend themselves, by sharing the burden we've carried alone for so long, we can finally rest. He touched the display, zooming in on Nexus Prime. Our ancestors sacrificed everything to protect the galaxy. Now it's time for the galaxy to stand with us. Together we'll face whatever comes. Together we'll hold the line. For Terra, the aide said. For Terra, the old man agreed. And for everyone else who looks up at the stars and dreams of peace. The display showed human ships spreading out across the galaxy, taking their positions along the rim. Silent guardians watching the void, ready for whatever might come from the darkness. The legends had returned, and they would never leave again.